في خلق السماوات والأرض واختلاف الليل والنهار لآيات لأولي الألباب.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to our program Islam and Science. Today we are going to discuss tobacco, its impact and globalization. Tobacco, as we know, the World Health Organization estimates that about 8 million or more than 8 million people die every year prematurely as a result of the use of tobacco. And this statistics is latest available record of WHO as at August 2023. And from these statistics, we are positively informed that more than 7 million out of this estimated number are direct users of tobacco who die yearly prematurely as a result of using tobacco directly. And about 1.3 million people are non-smokers who also die prematurely yearly as a result of second-hand smoke. That is, they are not smoking directly, but as a result of the activities of those who are busily enjoying their tobacco, they get the smoke inside their system and it's killed them prematurely. As we know, tobacco is a health hazard. And to me, with me in the studio to discuss this all-important topic is a regular face to the show. That is Movi Yusuf Abdel Khalik. Movi Sahab, assalamu alaikum and welcome.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Before we start, there will be a guest who will join us via phone call in the person of Dr. Tahir Nasser Sahib. He is an expert in tobacco and WHO activities. So we'll start and in due time he will join us on phone. Movi Sahib, to start with, what are the primary health consequences of the use of tobacco?
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. I like to simply put it like this: as life is sweet, but tobacco can make it bitter. It can make it bitter because it is that particular thing that can lead to a serious health hazard. Talking of how it affects the lungs, how it causes cancer, how it causes heart diseases, and even series of other issues attributed to it, to the direct intake of it, most especially the addictive nature of it. The addictive nature of it is evident because of the content known as nicotine that is found in it, and it is said that an average cigarette, for example, would yield like 2 milligrams of that nicotine. Now, when you are to consume that, and based on research, it is also stated that by the time you get like 500 to 1,000 milligrams of nicotine in your body, then there is a possibility of death. So if someone is taking cigarettes daily, just one daily, it means in the count of 250 days, that is just half a year, I mean just less than a year, he could be having in his body something that ranges up to the 500 milligram already. That's even taking just a single cigarette daily. So it means within a single year, when someone starts taking tobacco regularly, the person is actually liable to death. And that is the danger that we see, that it has reached a state that it cannot even be covered up anymore. It is quite apparent to the world. The health ministries are speaking against it, to the point that even those who are producing cigarettes are now to write on it that smokers are liable to die young. So when something is now quite apparent to us that this thing can cause death, can cut our life short, and even if we keep on living with it, we may be subjected to series of diseases, then what is the point in still going by that thing? What is the point in keeping that particular content? By saying all this, I don't mean that the leaf itself or the plant itself is useless to the world. I mean, we can take more advantage of it by making further researches on some other advantages that it can give to the world and it can benefit. For example, I know within Africa, people use it, I mean, they plant tobacco leaf in order to keep snakes away. I mean, we know how dangerous snakes in Africa are. There are many poisonous snakes in Africa, but people have experienced it, that wherever they find tobacco, snakes do not get there. I wouldn't know probably if it is tobacco that is at work or something else though, but at least researchers can go more into tobacco and see other benefits of it, because we are very sure in Islam that God Almighty doesn't create anything without purpose. So there could be so numerous purposes to the existence of tobacco, but one thing is obvious till date: the consumption of it is dangerous to our health. So it is more important we keep away from it.
I think humans would rather get a lot of wisdom learning from the snakes, who don't want to harm their health, so they would want to run away from the presence of tobacco.
So if snakes can use their brain and run away from tobacco, what of human?
Yeah, it is quite fascinating why humans does that, even though it is written boldly on cigarettes and those stuff that smoking is harmful to your health. So talking about smoking, Dr. Taisab is with us on phone. So I will turn to him. Dr. Taisab, smoking, it is written even on the cigarette boxes during the advertisement that smoking is harmful to your health. Yet, people keep on smoking. What makes smoking so addictive? Dr. Saab.
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah. Thank you for having me on. Smoking is a major public health threat. It kills over about 8 million people each year, and is the leading cause of preventable death and disease worldwide, actually. Smoking causes, as we know, cancer, heart disease, stroke, lung disease, diabetes, COPD. It can also cause eye problems as well, problems with the immune system, such as rheumatoid arthritis. And not only your own smoking, but secondhand smoking also contributes to the death of about 41,000 adults every year and 400 children every year. So the question of its addiction is related in many ways to its harm. I mean, not being able to give up something that is good is not a problem, but not being able to give up something that is so deeply harmful is obviously a serious issue. And smoking is highly addictive because of the presence of nicotine, in particular, in tobacco products. So nicotine is a drug. It occurs naturally in tobacco, and it's thought to be as addictive as heroin or cocaine, actually. When people smoke, nicotine becomes rapidly a part of their daily routine, and it gets intertwined in their habits and their feelings. So nicotine exposure in adolescence and in your teenage years, it alters the acetylcholine and glutamate receptor signaling in the what's called the prefrontal cortex. So it's an area that sits a bit behind the frontal cortex, and this is one of the last areas of the brain to mature. And it may explain why you get altered cognitive function and attention performance in adolescents, in teenagers who smoke. And studies have shown that smoking is most likely to become a habit if it's done during the teenage years in particular, and that the younger a person is when they begin smoking, the more likely they are to become addicted to nicotine. Nicotine dependence itself can cause physical and mood-related symptoms, strong cravings, anxiety, irritability, restlessness, and they can even get withdrawal symptoms when they try to quit smoking, which can include irritability, nervousness, headaches, and trouble sleeping. The first week, especially days 3 to 5, is usually the worst, and most relapses happen in these first 2 weeks of quitting. And actually, if you get through the 2-week period, it gets easier. And over time, the withdrawal symptoms fade, as long as a person stays smoke-free. There are also psychological factors associated with smoking addiction. So if a person has depression, anxiety, somatization, these all correlated with the use of cigarettes. And often people use cigarettes and nicotine addiction as a crutch, as an emotional and a social crutch, to help them through other issues. It affects behavior, mood, emotions, and there's kind of this strong psychological dependence on smoking. And if people who smoke, they can become quickly dependent on nicotine, and so this addiction doesn't even take very long to build up. It can happen quite quickly. So nicotine, and in addition to nicotine, the tobacco smoke has lots of other chemicals, at least 70 known carcinogens, so cancer-causing molecules, and they can damage DNA, other genetic material. It also damages the lining of blood vessels, causing them to narrow and harden, give you what's known as ischemic heart disease, increases your risk of stroke, and also causes damage to the lining of the lungs, what's called the mucociliary tract, a mucociliary escalator, damages the clearance of sputum, which results in recurrent inflammation and recurrent infection, which can manifest as chronic bronchitis. And then not only to non-smokers is secondhand smoke harmful, also to children and pregnant women as well. It's also associated with an increased risk of what's known as SIDS, so sudden infant death syndrome. So quitting smoking is one of the most important actions people can take to improve their health. There's many ways to quit smoking, which we can go into. But really, it's this nicotine in particular, out of all the chemicals in the tobacco, that causes this kind of neurological dependency. And it is a neurological dependency, but as with all things in the human mind, it is possible to overcome, and people do it every year. So people should not use the fact that it has a biological basis of addiction to say, oh, it's impossible. It's not impossible. People do quit every year, and they quit and give up smoking for life. So if you are a smoker and you're struggling to quit smoking, then think carefully about the harm you're doing yourself and others around you, your children, your wife, your husband, your family members, and make a plan to stop, and make sure you get through those first 2 weeks in particular, and you'll do well.
Okay, Taisab, Jazakumullah for that thorough insight. He made mention about smoking leading to cancer and even mutation in the DNA and those sorts of view. Looking at the number of arrays, the arrays of disadvantages and harm in smoking, as alluded by Taisab, what does Islam teaches or have to say about smoking? Because looking at all this, surely the Prophet ﷺ should give us guidance on that. What does Islam say?
Yeah, directly, if we look for the word smoking or the word tobacco, we may not actually get it in the Quran or maybe from the statement of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, because it's not something quite common or native to the area which the Holy Prophet ﷺ lived during that period of time. But as Hadrat Imam Mahdi ﷺ informed us that if that thing was actually existing with the Holy Prophet ﷺ, he would have forbid it. And the wisdom, the understanding behind it is things that are so dangerous to the health like that, the Holy Quran clearly forbid us from it, saying, "La tulqu bi aydikum ila tahluka." Do not use your own hand to bring destruction to yourself. That is, you can't take your own life with the outcome of what your hands is doing. So you yourself, you know that this thing is dangerous for your health, and if you keep on taking it, then you are liable to die young. So it becomes something that is totally forbidden in Islam. Besides that, if we look into the description, to the effects and the state of tobacco itself, we can easily find a similitude to it in the allegorical description in the Holy Quran regarding, there is a particular tree. I will call it an allegorical tree because people do not have consensus on the particular type of tree or leaf or plant it is, but it is known as Shajaratu Zakum, the tree of Zakum. And that Zakum is said to be a tree of hell or a plant of hell. And why? Because the Quran designates it as Ta'amul Athim, what the sinners do consume. kalmuhl. Now see how the Quran describes it, just like with the effect of tobacco. Kalmuhl, just like molten copper. Yagli fil butun, it continues to boil in the stomach. It continues to boil inside man. Kagoli il-hamim, like the running of hot water. So that is the effect. So for a Muslim, when you have this particular description of a thing, and you see another thing that matches that description directly, then you don't even need to be looking for, did God Almighty mention tobacco, in particular the word tobacco? Because if at all it is tobacco that was mentioned, then any other plants could also be used, could also have the same effect. Then it will not be questionable that, okay, God has forbid tobacco but did not forbid this plant. And you take that plant, you say God has forbidden tobacco and this plant, but not that one. But the description God Almighty has given for the plant of Zakum indicates how destructive it is and how hateful it is expected to be to man. So directly from what we have learnt from the Holy Quran, whatever will cause destruction to human life must be forbidden at any point in time. We must keep away from it. Not to talk of what is even now described with all those contents, and the thing we are talking about has exact relation to the same thing. God Almighty call it the food. What the sinners consume. So you actually don't want to be a sinner. You don't want to be a criminal to the state. But consuming cigarettes or tobacco actually pushes you to that certain level where you can, psychologically it can make you misbehave, in the sense that you are already consuming what is harmful to you and is harmful to the society as well. So you are not helping the society. You are actually doing wrong to the society and being a sinner to the society by that level.
Okay, Jazakumullah Morisab. So that will mean that anything that categorically, directly or indirectly, is harmful to the human health is forbidden in Islam in that respect. Forbidden. Okay, so that will mean that our Muslim brothers who say, no, smoking is not forbidden in Islam, because like you said, if Allah Almighty should mention each plant that he would forbid, then the Quran would basically turn to a botanic book, yeah. And I think that really makes sense. That he described it so beautifully that once you see this description, then you stay away from it. Okay, so I would again go to our guest on phone, Taisab, asking with respect to addiction. We know it is so addictive, and some people are already in it. Some, they wish to stop, and it is difficult, as we know, generally getting addictive with substances. So could you please allude or outline for us some of the measures that one can take in order to get rid of his addiction?
So the first thing to do when quitting smoking is to recognize that you've got a problem, to recognize that you are addicted to smoking, right? That you want to quit smoking. And one of the most important things is to recall all of the harms of smoking first. Recall its harms, recall its and balance and weigh in your mind the benefits versus its harms. Think of your children, think of your family members, think of your own health and the fact that you want to live a long time. Meet other people who have quit smoking. Meet other people who have suffered from things like lung cancer and smoking-related disorders, COPD, emphysema. Talk to them about how it has affected their lives. Understand, therefore, the great harm that it is doing you, and that will all increase your motivation to quit and to recognize that it is a problem. Nicotine dependence is basically the major hurdle of quitting smoking, and withdrawals symptoms, as we've discussed, can occur in the worst periods, days 3 to 5 after quitting smoking. And so it's really important to know that as well, to have that knowledge, so that when you go to quit, you know that it's not, the cravings aren't going to be as bad for the rest of your life. It's just a temporary phase in that first week. They continue afterwards, but they're the worst in the first week. Quitting smoking isn't easy. We did mention earlier that, it's as addictive as heroin, for example, but it is possible, and thousands do it every single year. Um, Increasing the chances is through seeking professional help. And the help and support you can get is nicotine replacement therapy, for example, counseling, and prescription medications. So nicotine replacement therapy can reduce withdrawal symptoms. It gives you nicotine gum, nicotine lozenges, nicotine patches, inhalers, or nasal sprays. And then there's counseling to help people develop those coping strategies and to address the psychological factors of smoking addiction. And then finally, there's some prescription medications as well to help decrease cravings and withdrawal symptoms. So the next step is very important, is to establish reasonable, specific, achievable goals. And these should be purpose-driven. They should be realistic and measurable. What you do is you set a quit date. You set a date on which you will stop. And you don't do it, you don't wake up in the morning and go, right, I'm not going to smoke today, okay? You have to prepare yourself. You have to get the gum. You have to get the counseling in place. You have to get the support network. You have to have told people. You have to have built it up in your mind as a date on which you will quit. And the reason it's important to set a date and stick to it is because, and follow through with it, and not to just do it on a whim, not to just quit on a day, on a one day you just wake up and decide not to smoke anymore, is because if you do it without any kind of support network, you're very likely to fail. And if you fail repeatedly at quitting smoking, it actually creates a sense of helplessness and a sense that, well, I can't quit. I've tried. But in reality, you haven't really properly tried. What you've done is you've just tried to quit smoking on a whim, not in a proper, serious way. So other ways you can help yourself to quit is to avoid common triggers. So common triggers are things like drinking coffee, taking breaks at work, social situations. Think about the situations or moments in which you suddenly feel like you need a cigarette, that you need tobacco, and figure out how to avoid those. It may be, for example, changing the people you hang out with at work at break time because they all smoke, or going to a different coffee place where people aren't smoking all the time. So learning alternative ways to cope with stress is also important. So smoking becomes a dependency psychologically because it helps with anxiety, it helps with stress. So you need to replace that with something else. Okay, so if you're getting rid of smoking as a tool in your life to deal with anxiety and stress and difficulty, then think about other things you can do to replace it, such as prayer, such as reading, writing, even exercise. So avoiding triggers is important in quitting smoking, as we've talked about. And so in conclusion, quitting smoking is a challenging but achievable goal. We have to recognize the problem, seek professional help, set clear goals, and develop healthy coping mechanisms for stress, and avoid triggers to smoking. Quitting smoking is not easy. Nobody says it's easy, but it is possible.
Okay, so Jazakumullah Tahir Saab for that beautiful outline of how to get rid of your addiction. But with the same, I would have Maurice Saab, if you have anything to add to the measures in which one can get rid of his addiction.
Yes, the measure we need to indicate is that method taught by Hadrat Imam Mahdi alayhi salatu wasalam, and it was the best of all in my opinion, because it is the guide for our time, and the way it helped someone to quit his addiction is what I'm going to indicate. But this method actually came from the Holy Quran itself. The Quran puts down a regulation for believers: Kunu ma'as-sadiqin, always stay with the righteous ones. So it means someone who is addicted to anything that is not okay, that is not good for his health and his society, is actually living within the company of those who are helping him towards that particular evil. Therefore, or the person is in seclusion due to some thinking or some depression and whatever it may be. But what the Quran first advice is, change the environment and live with those who are pious. So when you are in the company of those who are pious, then you expect a change of mindset. Now, this incident happened during the time of Hazrat Imam Mahdi alayhi salatu wasalam, how someone who was addicted to hookah had to quit hookah because of him. The scenario was that he actually knew if he got closer to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he wouldn't get the advantage to consume hookah. Yes, yet at the same time, he was thinking, how is it possible for him to quit this thing? Because if he wanted to quit, actually, as each and everyone taking it wants to quit, but you always feel like this thing is impossible. But you cannot take hookah in the presence of the Prophet ﷺ, because, I mean, that would be too bad for him. So he had this double problem together. He wants to quit, but thinks he cannot quit because he's already addicted to it. And if he gets to the site of the Prophet ﷺ, there's a problem that he cannot take hookah there, and his body will be demanding it. So he was always avoiding him. Now, there was, at a point in time, something compelled him for which he had to visit. And with the idea of, okay, when he sits in the company of the Prophet ﷺ, after a while, he is going to look for a private place in order to smoke hookah, then return. So that was his initial plan. But upon getting to meet the Prophet ﷺ, it was the time for a program. When the program gets finished, you feel like the program will finish, so I go and take hookah. Then it was time for Salat. You feel like, okay, after Salat, I go and take hookah. Then it was time for another program. You feel like after that program, I mean, it started happening one after the other, till the day ended. You felt like, seriously? I have gone for this whole day without taking hookah. And now it is time to sleep. Even the program, it was still ongoing close to the night that time. I felt like, how is this possible? I've not taken it since morning. Then, feasibly, something actually got him occupied to the point that he slept off without taking. To realize the next morning that he has not taken hookah, then he had to explain that no, there is no opportunity to take hookah, to smoke hookah in this particular location. And little bit, I mean, by living within that vicinity, he was able to quit hookah. So, in line with what the Holy Quran puts, Kunu ma'asadiqin, be with the pious ones. So it is necessary for someone who is already addicted, either to smoking of tobacco or any other addiction, alcohol whatsoever. Take this particular method. Leave the area of people, the circle of people you are living with. Try to dissociate yourself from them. Then look for a better companion, a better companionship, a better area where you get some some cultured people to sit with them and live with them and befriend them. Then that will really help in quitting this addiction.
Jazakumullah for that wonderful scenario. Actually, yeah, it makes a lot of sense because you wouldn't expect to be able to stop something whereby you are living in that environment. The environment itself wouldn't permit you. So, kunu ma'asadiqin. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so very briefly, because of time limit, what has led to the globalization of tobacco? Just briefly.
I will mention that in the initial stage, people actually thought there was some benefits attached to it. And even some scientists were thinking that, I mean, some explorers were thinking this particular content opens up these holes in the body, this and that. I mean, considering there are some benefits to it. But with that, it spread all over because of the excitement it creates in the initial stage. But finally, upon realizing the dangers in it, the major problem we now face nowadays is the government have not been able to take a bold step to stop it. Why? Because some big companies have spent a huge amount on it. So which makes it a huge problem to deal with because it affects the economy. And besides that, the way it is being advertised as well, you consider it to be something so good. I mean, despite the content written that smokers are liable to die young, but as long as you continue to pump something into a society, then you always find people who will consume it, because if there is no one to consume it, you won't be pumping it. So they keep on pushing it to people. So even those who want to quit, they still find it at easy reach, and they're able to purchase it at meager amounts. So they keep on consuming that tobacco that is not good for the body. So the necessary thing is the government should put a ban on it, stop it, I mean, the consumption of it.
Jazakumullah and Hassan Jaza. So if we can actually do away with it, then we need to take a bold decision that we are putting a ban on it so that we can save ourselves. With that, brings us to the end of the program. It has become a very interesting discussion, but time is really not on our side. So viewers, as we've heard from our speakers, smoking is very dangerous and harmful to our health. Allah has spoken about it lengthily. So we should try our best and stay away from smoking. With that, we ask you to try and live healthy and try and stay away from smoke, because we need you alive. Till we meet again next week. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.